All right, good morning, everybody. This is the Tropical Storm Beryl briefing as of 10:30 a.m. Central Time this Saturday, July 6th. Had a couple of small changes since the last issuance yesterday at 4:30. We now have tropical storm warnings in place for the immediate coast and the Gulf and Laguna Madre. And the track of Beryl is locking in place, increasing the confidence on where the minimal impacts will be, mostly away from the coast and a little more impactful on the coast. We'll go over those details as we move forward. So here are the situation overview details. As of 10 a.m., Beryl is located 385 miles southeast of South Padre and expected to regain hurricane strength sometime late tonight or early Sunday while approaching the Texas coast. Confidence in the forecast track has increased. And what I mean by that is the Hurricane Center's forecast for the last two advisories going back to 10 p.m. last night are almost right on top of each other. And that shows that our confidence is picking up and increasing, which is good news for decision making. So that confidence allows for us to say a minimum threat for the lower Texas coast, while a higher threat for the middle and upper Texas coast. So as we mentioned yesterday, if you have contacts, partners, family, and friends that are in the Corpus Christi area over to Port Lavaca, Port Aransas, maybe even up to Port O'Connor, that's where our problems we think will be as the storm could rapidly intensify moving towards those areas. Beryl remains a compact cyclone, and it is expected to do so through the life cycle that we'll be facing here, with the 39-mile-per-hour wind radii only extending out to 90 miles to the northwest and 120 miles to the northeast of the center. Now, when I mean 39, I mean tropical storms. So that's basically 39 to 57 miles per hour overall. Now, the center is expected to pass 60 to 90 miles east of South Padre Island while intensifying. This location and track is becoming similar to what we saw with Hurricane Harvey in 2017, only the cyclone is expected to remain a little smaller and at lower intensity at the time that it passes east of the island. So because of the proximity and getting closer in time, a tropical storm warning has been hoisted for those areas along the coast, and the storm surge watch remains in effect for the immediate coastline. The hurricane watch also remains in effect for this particular advisory cycle, just in case there is a little wobble to the west later today. I will say this, if there's no wobble to the west later today, we will likely be dropping the hurricane watches and just leaving the tropical storm warnings in place, which is overall good news. So let's look at some other things that are going on here. Well, some beneficial rains. We can always use rain in early July where they fall, and we'll tell you where that will be in the next few slides. That will keep things green elsewhere, mainly along and east of IH-69C US 281 from eastern Hidalgo and Brooks County to the interstate over near Brownsville, Harlingen, and Raymondville. Farther east is where we're still a little bit concerned about potential flooding rain. Unfortunately, no appreciable rainfall is expected for the headwaters and the tributaries that feed Amistad and Falcon. So continued record to near record low levels up there until further notice. So the overview impacts matrix here has really not changed much from yesterday. It's really focusing on our coastal communities. So when you're preparing for wind, we're talking South Padre, Port Isabel, Bayview, Laguna Heights, Port Mansfield, etc. And our time frame is Sunday evening for Cameron and Willacy, and then overnight for Kennedy. There's a little bit of a speed up in the current track forecast, where we think that by midnight, Cameron and Willacy should be out of the woods, at least the beaches here, for the strong winds. Still be breezy, but the strong winds should be on their way northward toward Padre Island National Seashore. As for storm surge and inundation, same idea as yesterday, looking at the barrier island and unprotected shorelines on Laguna Madre. We're favoring better inundation potential north of Port Mansfield on Padre Island National Seashore, or PINS for short. And this is still Sunday evening through Monday morning. Flooding rain, no changes there, really favoring the coastal communities as we are for the wind. The time frame could begin as early as late Sunday afternoon, continue through daybreak Monday, with the better rain shifting northward after midnight on Sunday night. For tornado, we're now decreasing the threat to near zero. Not zero exactly, but near zero. And if there were to be any tornadic activity, mainly east of the Interstate 69E and US 77, that's east of Brownsville, Harlingen, and Raymondville, time frame remains the same Sunday afternoon, actually through Sunday night, and maybe through Monday morning, the farther north you get into Kennedy County. And for marine, that's our big danger. So we have the tropical storm warnings right now. in the hurricane watch in all those areas. It is conceivable that we would have a hurricane warning for the Gulf beyond 20 nautical miles out. So needless to say, this is a small craft remain in port situation, and larger craft and shipping vessels should be out of the harm's way before and wait till after the storm passes. This also includes the Brownsville ship channel and the port of Brownsville. In past events like this, we have seen Mexican shrimp and other fish boats come in for safe waters or safe harbor into the port of Brownsville. That may be the case again with this event. So wait and see. You may see those boats coming in for safe harbor on Sunday. So our hazard for this event, we've lowered the winds a little bit overall because the tropical storm force wind field or wind radii are just touching South Padre. So we're making it an elevated threat here. And then Port Mansfield north for the surge, that is also an elevated threat for surge, and a little bit lower down towards the island. Flooding rain, again, east of Brownsville, Harlingen, and Raymondville, that would be a limited threat, possibly elevated threat towards those communities that I mentioned earlier, Port Isabel, Bayview, Laguna Heights, Laguna Vista, and South Padre. No issues on river flooding. We've lowered the tornadoes towards near none. And then marine, of course, remains significant to extreme, with the hurricane itself going over the coastal waters between 50 and 60 miles out as we move north of Port Mansfield. So here's our current satellite view. It is well organized, as we thought it would stay, and expect it to remain so. It should begin intensifying this afternoon and tonight. We are actually seeing signs of that with the latest aircraft reconnaissance, which showed that the pressure had decreased just a little bit this morning in that big ball of convection or thunderstorm activity kind of on the north side of it. So that will be a sign that we think intensification will begin later today and then turn into a hurricane overnight or early Sunday. What we're also concerned about, and this really is more for the coastal bend up through the Middle Texas coast, is a period of rapid intensification. Some of our models are suggesting that this could become a Category 2 hurricane by the time it makes landfall between Port Aransas and perhaps as far east as Port O'Connor. Again, we're not forecasting that now, still forecasting a Category 1, but there are signs that it could intensify rapidly. The good news for the valley, and certainly for even our coastline, is that that would be well beyond our area. East of us, we're still expected to be a minimum Category 1 hurricane with winds between 75 and 85 miles per hour in the core, which would be over those waters well east of South Padre Island. So here's our wind threat, kind of goes along with that. That minor damage for inland, island, and bayside communities from 1 a.m. That's the wrong dates there, but it will actually be from late Sunday evening through early Monday morning. And there'll be isolated neighborhood power outages possible during this period. So I'll fix up this slide for y'all before we set it. But you can see how tight to the coast it is, a little bit farther west in basically uninhabited ranch country there of Kennedy. So the ranchers up there need to sort of keep an eye on it towards Sarita, but we should be okay for the most part. So the wind speed probabilities kind of show this. We have dropped the numbers down a bit further today as we thought we might as of yesterday. Now only a 3 to 5 in 10 chance for 39 to 57 mile per hour winds in eastern Cameron through eastern Kennedy, and just a 1 to 3 in 10 chance for eastern Hidalgo and Brooks County, with slightly higher chances, up to 7 in 10 chance for the immediate barrier island. This is still subject to change. If the storm is a little slower to intensify or nudges a bit to the east, we'll be moving those percentages down in all areas. The favorite time remains Sunday evening through Monday morning. Again, that is subject to change with the lower chances, but the time frame is probably about the same. If anything, a little bit earlier, perhaps into late Sunday afternoon, but that's about it. As far as the 58 mile per hour wind speed probabilities, these are the ones that could cause more significant damage and certainly power outages. It's a very thin sliver right now. It's just a 5 to 10% chance east of the interstate here in Brownsville, Harlingen, and Raymondville. Favorite time remains Sunday evening through Monday morning, perhaps as early as late Sunday afternoon. And right now we've removed the probability for anywhere along and west of Interstate 69C US 281, which would include the McAllen Metro up to just west of Falfurrias. So out of the woods they are, and we think that's going to stay the same based on our increasing confidence that we have in the system. The earliest arrival time, that hasn't changed much, maybe a little bit sooner than we had before, but it's still looking at Right around daybreak Sunday morning would be the earliest time for the lower Texas coast. Then the latest time would be during the day on Sunday, like late afternoon for the lower Texas coast, shifting to the evening as we get closer to Port Mansfield and north, and then farther inland, if it can even make it that far, into the overnight hours. So it looks like more of a Sunday evening night event for most areas, even near the coast, where we do expect those stronger winds. So here's our storm surge threat. This area hasn't changed. It's the coastal communities of the island and some of the bayside communities too. But right now, based on the fact that this storm is a tropical storm and only expected to intensify to a low-end Category 1 at a position very similar to where Harvey was east of South Padre, back then we only saw 1 to barely 2 feet of above predicted tides, above normally dry ground. And if this is a weaker system that's more compact, we're probably going to be closer to 1. So it will not be what we saw with Alberto, but it probably will be enough to cover the beach in some water during high tide on perhaps Sunday morning and maybe into Monday morning before things come back to normal. Now on pins, we're thinking a little bit higher. So 2 to 3 feet of inundation above normally high ground, and possibly at Port Mansfield, we could see some dockside issues there with damage or higher water, but we don't expect that now in Port Isabel or South Padre. In this case, we'll be looking at it closely, and we may end up issuing a surge warning from north of Port Mansfield up to Baffin Bay in our area, which would include Padre Island National Seashore, and we may have just a coastal flood advisory farther south, which would include South Padre for the nuisance minor flooding that we see quite often during the year. Here's our rainfall, the latest expected total rainfall, a very sharp edge to it. The potential for the flooding rain, which would be nuisance flooding up to 2 feet of water depth, is really those coastal communities. Port Mansfield, Port Isabel, South Padre. You get into Brownsville, Harlingen, Raymondville, there is a possibility we could see total 1.5 to 2 inches, but if it comes in bands, we'll be able to handle that, assuming all drainage, ditches, canals, and culverts are clear. And then you can see the Mid-Valley and Upper Valley are not getting much at all. Maybe enough to keep things green in McAllen, Edinburgh area, but honestly, barely any rain at all in Starr, Jim Hogg, and Zapata County. And confidence has increased in this forecast for sure. So to close out, confidence is now moderate to high that the event will occur as forecast, and we're now high confident on the impacts that we expect to see and where there will be. So again, to reiterate, 39 to 57 mile per hour wind gusts, most likely near and along the coast of Cameron, Willacy, and Kennedy. Remotely possible for those same areas to get into the damage category, so we can't rule that out, but especially from Port Mansfield north to Baffin Bay area, that's where you think those winds could be strongest and last long enough to create some problems there. Time frame for the strongest winds, Sunday evening through Monday morning, but the latest of that time will be on pins. We do think that most of the strong winds will be out of the South Padre Island area as early as midnight and as late as 2, 3 a.m. on Monday morning. So it's an overnight event at most. By Monday morning daybreak, Cameron County, Willacy County, certainly Hidalgo County should be actually doing all right. Maybe some leftover showers, but certainly not much wind to worry about. So Monday for your start of work or summer school should be a-okay at this point. Tidal run-up likely on the beach and bayside of the barrier island. We mentioned those storm surge values, thinking the higher numbers would be along pins, and that will determine whether we go warning or advisory, and we think the warning would be from pins northward. We'll see, even that could be an advisory level, but we'll find that out and deliberate on that with the Hurricane Center later on this afternoon. We mentioned rainfall flooding possible in those very poor drainage areas east of IH-69E in Cameron, Sunday evening through early Monday morning, but really now looking at Sunday evening into the early overnight hours, probably ending between midnight and 3 in the morning. And again, favoring those coastal communities, the Port Isabels, the Port Mansfields, the Laguna Vista, Laguna Heights, and South Padre. Farther west, it's not looking all that impressive for rainfall flooding, but certainly some of that rain would be nice to see. Like I said, this is not a wetter time of the year in early July, and to get rain now keeps things green, and we all like that. Tornado threat decreasing to near zero, and the number one hazard, again, dangerous marine conditions. We strongly urge anyone who is boating or fishing to seek safe harbor by the end of today to be on the safe side. Shippers should have plans to be out of the harm's way for tomorrow into Monday as well, as we're going to expect very rough and high seas and hurricane force wind gusts out over the water from really Sunday afternoon through Monday, but especially Sunday night into Monday morning as you get beyond, say, 20 to 40 nautical miles out into the shelf waters there. So with that, our next briefing will be by email, as a partner email, at 4:30 p.m. today after the next Hurricane Center update. Expect to see more changes to the watch warning disposition. And with that, I will close out this webinar and stop our recording.